mistake is seeing Spartans as military hardware. My Spartans are humanity's next step. Our destiny as a species. Do not underestimate them. But most of all, do not underestimate him.
There are franchises that define a generation, and then there are franchises that define what gaming itself could be. Halo was both, but this isn't a story about a bad game. This is a story about a franchise that was loved too much by its fans, but understood too little by the people running it. Let's go back to November of 2001. The Xbox launches, and with it, Halo Combat evolved. Nobody was ready for it. In an era where console shooters were considered inferior to PC, Bungie shipped something that rewrote every assumption. The gunplay was weightless and precise, the story was mythic, and the music was unlike anything gaming had produced at the time. Halo 2 added the Xbox Live multiplayer and essentially invented the modern online console experience. Halo 3 became a cultural moment. Finish the fight wasn't just a tagline. It was a promise to millions of players who had followed Master Chief across two console generations. On its launch night, Halo 3 made $170 million in 24 hours. It outsold every film in Hollywood that week. Halo wasn't just a video game franchise, it was the reason people bought an Xbox. But in 2010, something changed. Bungie, the studio that built Halo from nothing, that poured its identity into every Covenant battle and every Ringworld, announced it was leaving. Leaving Microsoft, leaving Halo, leaving the franchise they created. Their farewell was Halo Reach, a prequel, a tragedy, a story about soldiers who knew they were going to lose, but fought anyway. In retrospect, it almost feels like the writers were writing about their own lives. Bungie knew what they were walking away from. Reach was their goodbye. A beautiful, mournful, final goodbye. Microsoft still owned Halo though. The franchise was worth too much to retire, so they did what corporations do when they lose people who built something irreplaceable. They built a new studio to replace them. 343 Industries was formed in 2007. It was named after the AI character, the 343 Guilty Spark from the original games, a choice that in hindsight carries an uncomfortable irony. In the lore, a 343 Guilty Spark is a caretaker who becomes so obsessed with preserving a structure that he loses sight of why it mattered in the first place. The new studio inherited everything: the lore, the engine, the fanbase, the expectation. But what they couldn't inherit was the 20 years of creative instinct that Bungie had developed making it. Halo 4 arrived in 2012. It was technically impressive and emotionally ambitious, but it was fundamentally different in ways that the fanbase couldn't quite articulate but immediately felt. The gunplay was off, the multiplayer was bloated, and the soul was missing. In 2015, Halo 5 Guardians came out, and it made everything worse. It shipped without a split-screen co-op, a feature so core to Halo's identity that removing it felt like releasing a car without a steering wheel. The story fractured the Master Chief mythology in ways that confused the franchise's most loyal players. By 2015, the conversation around Halo had shifted. It was no longer, "this is the best shooter on the platform." It was, "remember when Halo was good." 343 had one chance to fix it, and they called it Infinite. The promise of Halo Infinite was simple and enormous at the same time. A return, a reset, a spiritual reboot of everything that had made the franchise the GOAT. The tagline said it all: the Master Chief is back. Not a new hero, not a new mythology. Him, the character millions of players had grown up with, back on a Halo ring, back to basics. The 2018 reveal trailer was stunning. An open world, exploration, freedom, and the classic art style, returning after the years of the gritty redesigns. Craig the Brute became a meme, and it even felt like the internet was falling back in love with something it had missed. Xbox made Infinite the flagship launch title for the Xbox Series X, the future of the platform, the game that would remind the world why Halo mattered. But development ran into trouble. The game was delayed a full year, from 2020 to December of 2021, a decision that at the time the community largely supported. Take the time, get it right. December 8th, 2021, Halo Infinite launches, and the responses were complicated. The campaign was genuinely good. The open world delivered on its promise, and Master Chief moved like Master Chief again. For the first time in nearly a decade, playing Halo felt like playing Halo again. The community exhaled, and then they turned around and looked. No co-op campaign, it's 2021, a feature that had existed in every Halo game since 2001. 20 years of playing through the story with a friend on a couch simply wasn't there. No Forge mode at launch. The fan-built creative engine that had sustained Halo's community for 15 years, gone. The multiplayer progression system was built around the battle pass so aggressively monetized that players calculated that it would take over 100 hours of gameplay to unlock a single armor that previous Halo games had given freely. The playlist options were so limited that players couldn't even choose to play their favorite game modes consistently. And then, the live service content roadmap. The updates, the story expansions, the seasonal content that would keep players engaged was almost entirely absent. Halo Reach had launched, but it hadn't arrived. The game was supposed to be a platform, a living, breathing Halo universe for the next decade, but instead it launched feeling like a foundation with no building on top of it. And what followed was a slow, painful public unraveling. Co-op campaign arrived 9 months after launch. 9 months to add a feature that had shipped on the original Xbox since 2001. Forge mode arrived 14 months after launch. And then it was time for the story content. The expansions that were supposed to continue the narrative players had invested in never came. In July of 2023, 343 Industries announced that all story expansions for Halo Infinite had been cancelled. The story that was supposed to be a decade-long platform would not be getting its story finished. The player count told stories that numbers can't lie about. At launch, Infinite peaked over 250,000 concurrent players on Steam alone, enormous numbers for a Halo game. And within a month, it had fallen to below 5,000. By 2023, it was averaging fewer concurrent players than games released a decade earlier. And then came the news that made everything feel final. In early 2023, Microsoft laid off hundreds of employees across its gaming division. 343 Industries was restructured so severely that multiple key developers who had worked on Halo for years announced their departures publicly. The franchise had no clear future, no announced new game, no timeline, no promise. Halo was always been about finishing the fight. It's the DNA of the franchise, literally the tagline of one of its most important games. The idea that a Halo studio would start a story and walk away from it mid-sentence is so contrary to everything the franchise represents that it landed differently than a bad update or a missing feature. It felt like abandonment, and the Halo community, the patient, the passionate, the 2-decade loyal fans, they felt it. The Reddit threads weren't angry anymore. They were tired. There's a specific kind of grief that comes when you stop being angry at something and start mourning it. The Halo community reached that point somewhere in 2023, and grief is much harder to come back from than anger. Now you may be wondering, what did Halo Infinite actually cost the franchise? Well, obviously, the answer would be the players, the market share, the cultural relevance, and all of the above. But the deeper loss is harder to quantify. Halo lost its position as the identity of Xbox. For 15 years, if you ask someone what game defined Microsoft's gaming platform, the answer would be immediate. That's now gone. The Xbox brand has rebuilt its identity around Game Pass and acquisitions. Halo is no longer the flagship, it's one title amongst hundreds. Halo lost its competitive scene. The Halo Championship Series, one of the most watched esports in the world, has declined to a fraction of its former audience. The game that essentially launched console esports has been replaced by titles built from the ground up for competition. And most painfully, Halo lost its new generation. Every great franchise survives by converting new players. The 20-year-old who plays Halo today becomes the 30-year-old who buys the next one with loyalty and nostalgia. Infinite failed to create those players. The children who are now gaming are growing up with Fortnite and Valorant, not Halo. The generational gap is a wound that doesn't heal quickly. You can't fix a bad game with patches. You cannot patch the childhood memories of an entire generation that chose something else. So is Halo dead, you may ask? Well, the answer is not yet, but it's in a place far more dangerous than death. It's irrelevant. Dead franchises get mourned and remembered fondly. Irrelevant franchises get forgotten. And Halo, the franchise that sold consoles, that invented online multiplayer for a generation, and that gave us one of gaming's most iconic characters, is closer to being forgotten than any of its fans ever possibly imagined. Microsoft has hinted at a new Halo in development, a new studio involvement, a reset. But we've all heard the word reset before. The difference between Halo's situation and No Man's Sky, the comeback that proved redemption is possible, is that Hello Games had something 343 may not have left: the benefit of the doubt. Sean Murray's team built trust one silent update after one silent update. They had a small, passionate community willing to give them a chance.